thank all of you that are here for such an important topic that sometimes gets missed. So my name is Don Ogden. We have a microphone here. If you have trouble hearing in the back, please let us know during the presentation and we'll certainly go to the mic. I want to tell you a little bit about the organization that has put this together, and then I'm going to introduce our speaker. If I didn't already, my name is Don Ogden. I'm the Director of Behavioral Medicine for Trinity Health System. On September 16th, 2017, Joshua Merriman passed away suddenly. This tragic event sparked an opportunity to represent Josh and honor all that he was passionate about and stood for. The Josh Merriman Foundation was started in October of 2017 by friends and family to help keep the spirit of Josh alive and celebrate the life he lived. Josh was a student at Robert Morris University. Throughout his young age, he participated in various sports and played all of them with a passion and a great desire to do the best that he could. His last sports participation was at Robert Morris, where he participated in club hockey. He was anticipating graduation with a bachelor's degree in business and finance in December of 2017. He also participated in various academic and social clubs. Not only was Josh an extraordinary student, he was also an avid golfer and loved to play poker. Josh's strong family background, as well as devout Catholic faith, drew him to be liked by all and excel in anything he put his mind to. Because of the memories created with him throughout his life and the strong character he displayed, the family and friends in charge of the foundation hope to continue his legacy. In May of this year, we started to meet and started to take a look at some things that we wanted to do as a foundation to honor Josh. One of the things we did this summer is we had a golf outing. It was a huge success. Can't even think about the number of people that contributed to this success. And speaking for the Merriman family, our sincere appreciation to all that contributed to this event. The other thing that we wanted to do is we also wanted to spread information and make people more aware of the impact of head injuries and the association with suicide. And that's why we're here today. Earlier today, we met with the OVAC down in Wheeling. The athletic directors that were there were very responsive to the message that our speaker tonight presented. And hopefully there's a takeaway for all of you tonight after this presentation. Junior Seau, Frank Gifford, Ken Stabler, Dwight Clark, Brett Farr, Tony Dorsett, and two individuals that I personally worked with, George Rogers and Andre Waters, all experienced traumatic brain injury. All of them were very popular. All of them were well accomplished in their sport. All of them gave 110% to their profession. Josh was no different. But we no longer can believe or buy into having an athlete who suffers a head injury has to suck it up. Instead, we as coaches, parents, and friends, and members of the community, we have to suck it up. We have to listen, and we have to speak up to come to the aid of these individuals who are at risk of suffering traumatic brain injury. Tonight's speaker is going to give you a lot of information to help you speak up. Today's speaker is Graham Thomas. He is the co-founder and CEO of the Untold Foundation, headquartered in Yardley, PA. Untold was created after the tragic loss of Graham's eldest son, Willie Alexander Thomas. At the Untold Foundation, he works with many organizations, schools, families, and individuals that have been impacted by traumatic brain injury. Graham completed his undergraduate studies at Elon University, where he received his bachelor's in economics with honors. His interests are changing the culture, policy, and stigma of mental health and the relationship to traumatic brain injury. He has lectured across North America on understanding the impact TBI has on one's mental health, along with the learning challenges associated with TBI. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to tonight's speaker, Graham Thomas.
Thank you. I'm going to try to go without a mic. If you can't hear me, I'll go back to the mic. Can everybody hear me? Yes? Raise your hand. Okay, good. So I'm going to give you a lot of information. I'm not a doctor. I work with a lot of doctors. So this is their information. I just unpack it so everybody in the general population can understand it, because doctors sometimes don't help us with that. I'm going to show you my son Alexander first, if my little remote here goes. Alexander started off as a soccer player years ago, and probably at about age 9 or 10, before a lot of this was really going on in the concussion world, he got hit in the head with a soccer ball. It's like doing one of these things at Beach Blast down in New Jersey, got hit in the head and did a little wobble. Never fell down, but we knew something was going on, so we left him out for probably a few weeks, and he was fine. At least we thought so. As time went on, he became a hockey player. Team USA, traveled all across North America, and I would say back probably in 2013, at the very beginning of the year, we were at the Olympic training facility out in Minnesota. And I never really liked to criticize him, but I wanted to make sure he understood what he would do on the ice and off the ice so he could get better, because his goal was to play in the NHL, like every kid probably dreams. So Alexander's at a facility at the Herb Brooks Arena, and we're going through a practice and a training session and a small scrimmage, and at the very end of it, he gets hit, and he's standing up, and I don't see this. After the game, he goes, "Dad, I blacked out right in the middle of it. I got hit against the boards. I don't remember a few seconds. I short shift, went to the bench, took myself out. No symptoms, no signs, just a blackout," which is a concussion, okay? It's a brain injury without concussion symptoms. So he had this. We go through the summer, he's practicing, everything seems to be going well, and I'm just gonna keep throwing up pictures of my son. So as we're doing this, he's at Merriman College for a college showcase, and it's in the very end of the summer, and the summer's going well, the team's playing well, and all of a sudden, it's the long weekend, the very last game, I run out, go to the bathroom, grab my coffee, come back in, and at the far end of the ice, there's someone on the ice laying there with people all around, medical people, stretchers. I'm thinking, it's not even a minute into the period, it's the third period, what's going on? Well, what I do is I find out, all my hockey moms and dads go, your son, who always got hit behind the boards, ran into a guy. The kid was coming across, he had his head down, my son went right through him. And when that happened, again, he blacks out and glides over and ends up right on the boards. And as he's on the boards, all of a sudden, he wakes up and he's like up, goes back to the bench, and as he goes back to this bench, his buddies are whacking him on the head, hitting him. Mind you, he just had another brain injury. He just had another concussion. 2 in a matter of like 6 months or less. Go fast forward to September, he's at a tournament up in Massachusetts, and for whatever reason, his emotions have lost him. He's now out of control. A kid hits our goalie, he's poking our goalie, trying to be a teammate. He grabs the kid underneath, and there's a thing called Anglewood Jack. It's from a movie. He starts pummeling this guy. Nobody gets hurt because they have all this equipment on, but he's hammering him. They both get kicked out. My son comes flying out, throwing his stick, throwing stuff into the locker room. 10 minutes later comes out, suit and tie on, because that's what he did, came over to the boards and he leans over and he's laughing. Dad, can you believe that? Wasn't that crazy? And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Like, what has happened to you? You've totally changed in a matter of months. I don't understand this. So nothing happens. He's, again, never had a diagnosed by a doctor concussion, even though we know now what a blackout is and some of the other things that he went through. He actually had some injuries. So beginning of October, gets kneed in the back of the head, and what happens? He sits out for 3 weeks, goes through great recovery and protocol, figures out that, okay, I'm ready to go play. Goes up to New Hampshire, another college showcase. We're playing, or he's playing rather, everything's going well. We come home on Saturday night. He was at a school called the Pennington School, prep school in New Jersey. So there's a lot of work, a lot of demand. He was getting all of this done, but said on Sunday, can I go visit my girlfriend? I go, we're going to a family birthday party. I don't know how I'm going to explain it to my in-laws. Go ahead. So he goes, and next thing I know, we get this text. If I get emotional, just bear with me. He goes, Mom and Dad, I love you very much. I have to stop the madness in my head. Tell my brothers and sisters I love them. And he jumped off the George Washington Bridge back 5 years ago. So that whole thing started this. And for us, it was unbelievable. This girl in the picture here, Avalon, she is a mess because she's like, I could have stopped him. I could have done something, like everybody does when they grieve. It was horrible. And this one here, I always laugh and joke about it because it's one of the last few pictures we had with everybody. And all three of my boys, that was about as big of a smile as I'd get out of any of them. It's crazy. Pennington School has never won a hockey championship. My son assisted the only 2 goals in the championship game. They won 2-1 in overtime. Going forward, this was said about a year ago in March by a senator or representative from the state of New Jersey. And the Brain Injury Association of America picked it up, which is, we're at the beginning of the end. Right now, traumatic brain injury is the leading cause of disability and death in our adolescents and children in America. It's unbelievable. Brain injury is doing this, and we don't have a cure for it. We have no way to solve this problem. We look at symptoms and signs, and we try to make sure that when those signs go away and symptoms go away, you're fine, go back to playing. It's 100% wrong. We have no idea metabolically if the brain is truly healed. We have no imaging techniques. We have no biomarkers like we do for other things to test it. We're using our skill set as concussion representatives and doctors to make sure if we're skilled enough that we can actually look through and make sure somebody's better. We really don't know. We really don't know. Also, right now we've found that, ages 0 to 4 and 15 to 19 are the most vulnerable ages. That's where most of this occurs. So as I was saying, today, diagnosing and treating brain injury, we're having the most difficult time. I have many, many pediatricians and general practitioners that diagnose concussions or at least act as the diagnosing party. And I'm not certain that they're actually doing a great job. But what we've done working with Concussion Legacy Foundation is we've created a website called concussionclinics.org. And you can find it on our website, on Concussion Legacy's website. You can Google it. If you're ever looking to find a concussion doctor, and hopefully we can get Trinity in this group as one of them, you can go out and actually plug your zip code in, and it'll give you a radius. As far as you want to drive or travel, it'll tell you who the top people are in the area. So you can go to somebody who does this every single day and can benefit from your going to that proper doctor. Like I said, there's no cure. We have very, very limited objective tools, if even any. Right now, we don't have a way to actually, like an x-ray and see if your arm's broken. We don't have a way to look at the brain and see that. We can see if there's major structural damage, but not the microscopic little pieces that we want to see to actually know if the damage is actually healed. That's our biggest problem. We don't know when it's healed. Another thing is brain injury looks a lot like mental health. I'll show you some slides in a few minutes that look just like mental health. Is the same thing as having a brain injury. And CTE is a little further down the line. But these are the things I get really excited about and really upset about, that we have a disease we have no cure for. And everybody wants to say they have a solve, they have no problem, and they can move forward with anything they're doing with sports when we don't really know if they're truly healed. We have people that, Josh had 8, possibly 9 diagnosed concussions. We don't know how many subconcussive blows he had. One of my good friends, Doug Smith out of Penn, he says these few things, that this neurological condition is totally misunderstood. We really don't know. And most obvious thing is the signs and symptoms are the only thing they teach doctors in medical school. There's no way to cure it, so they can't teach the treatment to the cure. They can teach recovery methods to get the symptoms to dissipate and signs to go away, but that's all they have. That's all we have. The doctors are not even being taught what to do because there's nothing to do at this point. We are probably 5 or 10 years away from really making a difference. And the other thing he talks about is looking at electrical failure. Your brain is an electronic organism, and if anything short circuits, certain things won't operate. You won't think properly, you won't react properly if you're an athlete, and you won't think properly. If you have a brain injury or concussion, I mentioned this earlier, and it's something we do in Pennsylvania at all the schools we go to. When we put in a concussion management team in a school, we mandatorily demand, and it's not a law, but we demand it is, if you're 16, 17, 18, or whatever age you are in high school or any college or university and you have a brain injury, you're not allowed to drive. You are impaired. You should not be behind the wheel. If you're behind the wheel, you shouldn't be driving at all. It's like being drunk. It's not safe. It's really not safe at all. Another one of my friends, Bob Stern, he's more concerned about the subconcussive blows. Subconcussive blows are brain injuries that don't give us concussion symptoms. How many times do we sit in a situation where we see a football play, guy gets hammered in the NFL or college or high school, big collision, and they get up, they don't wobble, they don't fall. We don't know what that's actually doing to the brain. Maybe nothing. Maybe that particular person's neck or whatever it may be strong enough that the brain doesn't shake enough. But because we can't image and we can't really do a protein biomarker like saliva or blood right now, because those things, the biomarkers, just so we all know, biomarkers are sex distinct, male and female, they're age specific, time from injury specific, and also after multiple injuries, we don't know what the proteins need to be. We're a long way away from solving that. There's people doing great research and we'll eventually get there, we're just not there now. So when you hear the saliva and blood biomarkers, be excited they're gonna be here, but they're not here now. So we can't rely on them to solve any problem for us. Chris Nowinski says this, his main thing with subconcussive are, and this is what I'm stating, is that the neurometabolic component of a brain injury, we don't know when it's healed. When all the signs and symptoms are gone, we don't know if the brain's really healed enough for us to jump back in. Doug Smith, the first slide I had there, he jokingly but seriously says, it could take up to 50 years for one brain injury to heal, because the brain cells are the slowest growing cells in the body. So because of that, it's not like an 8-week broken leg or broken arm where all of a sudden it's going to be healed. You can do an x-ray, it looks good, let's go. It's a different structure, different tissue, different cells. And also your brain, contrary to popular belief, does not have sensory nerve cells. You pinch yourself, it hurts. You have a headache in the brain, that's not from sensory nerve cells like you do have in your arm. It's a metabolic headache. It's a chemical structural headache. And because of that, you need to reduce the inflammation and get the chemicals going correctly back in your brain. I don't know if you've seen this. I won't get too sciencey on you, but this is what a typical neuron looks like. Signal comes in, travels down the axon, and transfers to the next component. If you have a brain injury, chemical reaction occurs. You have potassium going out, calcium going in, and your energy crisis in your cells occur. And this is where all of the structures messed up. This is what one piece of a total structure of your brain is going through. The energy crisis is out of whack. In most concussions, mind you, we're talking about this like it's a death sentence. It's not. Most concussions, 90% recover in 14 days. So 90% of the people, they don't have any symptoms, 2 weeks in, and they're ready to go, do whatever they want to do. The 10% that linger 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, some of the research says they didn't get out of the game quick enough. Some of the research says that they're not healed properly because they haven't taken time off and gone through the right steps to actually do benefit to their brain. A lot of people continue sports, continue school, and they're overworking their brain, which runs their entire body. So the energy crisis after several days will go away. Eventually, several days, it's almost gone, and then eventually many days, 2 weeks or so, 3 weeks, it's gone. Normal function. These are the signs and symptoms, partially, of a TBI. I don't know what's going on here. So essentially, the thinking, physical, emotional, this is what mental health looks like. I don't know why we can't see it, but the grayed out ones, and there's also ones under thinking, the grayed out ones are the mental health ones. Are non-mental health. So everything up there would be your mental health component. And a regular concussion has all of those blacked in. So essentially, this is some of the differences that you need to know. Post-concussion syndrome is going to last longer if not treated properly. Could last for several weeks, possibly years. CTE is going to happen later on in life. Like people get worried, oh, I have CTE. Oh my God, I've had so many times I have CTE. CTE is long-term. It's like Alzheimer's and dementia. It happens later in life. It doesn't happen today. Although some of the people that have passed away, taking their own lives, we've started to study their brains. And we have a kid, Austin Trenum, 15 years old, playing football since age 5 or 6 in Maryland. He actually had CTE, a very small little speck in his brain, beginnings of CTE. So we're seeing it earlier and earlier and earlier in people. We just can't diagnose it in the living people yet. We're working hard on that. We have some things that have good science has shown us that we're actually closer than we would like to believe, so we don't have to actually test it in an actual living, in a post-mortem. Right now, CTE is only diagnosed post-mortem. We have no cure for it. Tau protein, which is released when you get hit in the head, starts to tangle around parts of the tissue in your brain. And most of the stuff we look for Alzheimer's and dementia, it's on the surface of the brain. CTE is normally on the inside of the brain, where the brain is destroyed. This one's probably not going to show. There's a brain on the left, but these are the components of memory: attention, encoding, storage, and recall. Those are the 4 obvious little structural components. When you have a TBI, encoding breaks. It breaks down. You can't remember things, you can't process them and put them in your brain in the same exact way, and because of it, you start to fail in class. You start to have trouble with memory. And these are the things right here. Impulse control gets worse. Your problem solving, your emotional control is way out of whack. And a lot of times people get very frustrated. Like I have a friend who was a lacrosse player, AP student, top of his class, gets 1 too many brain injuries, and what happens? He starts doing poorly in school, and it's all because of his memory. He studies 3 and 4 times on a certain subject at night. The following day, he takes a look, can't even do the test that's given to him in class because he just can't remember. His recall isn't there because his encoding part was broken. Seems pretty simple, but it's a pretty important component for processing the memory. Depending on where your brain was actually damaged, in most brain injuries, we're not seeing one little area, we're seeing multiple areas. If our frontal lobe has been damaged, obviously we've got a wide variety: thinking, reasoning, mood, inhibition, judgment. If the back vision gets hit, which we see a lot of vision problems with a lot of the concussion people that we work with, we're having them go through a wide variety of vision testing. I know that not everybody's familiar with a test called the King-Devick test, but we use that on the sidelines in Pennsylvania, and a lot of the pro teams use it as well. The reason why is it takes about 1 minute to go through somebody who was baselined and make sure that they actually can pass the King-Devick test at this normal standard baseline that you did before. It takes 1 minute for each card. The cards use your eyes, which your eyes use multiple parts of your brain, about 50% of it. Your eyes won't lie. You can't really cheat your eyes. You could cheat a balancing maybe a little bit, but your eyes will not allow you to cheat. We found that, I don't know, you guys said you don't normally use it. We use it all the time. Mayo Clinic loves it. They don't really endorse anything, and they endorsed this about a year ago. So it's become one of our go-to tests. Most schools usually do not do adequate baseline testing for price and cost and what they use for their schools. A lot of schools use impact testing. Probably everybody's heard of it. I think you guys said you use C3 Logic. Another great program. But there's about 25 of them. We don't have to do all 25, but my feeling is if we're not doing a good handful of them, it's almost like a carpenter showing up to your house with very little information, a hammer and a saw. Where's the nails? Where's the lumber? Where's all the rest? We can't evaluate something or do something for someone without all the proper tools. So we need more baseline testing done early on for all these kids so we can actually know what we're doing with them. Now, road to recovery. Everybody thinks it's a straight line. For us, in everything we've seen, we've never had a straight line recovery unless it's one of those miraculous 2-week recoveries like everybody else. The more than 2-week recovery has this: your lifestyle changes, you're not in practice, you're not hanging out with your friends, you don't remember stuff. Maybe you're not sleeping as well. Sleep is a huge problem. People don't sleep as well normally for stress and being anxiety and thinking about things. If you had a brain injury in there, you're not going to sleep well at all. You're going to have times when you sleep a lot and sleep very little. For some reason, you may wake up in the middle of the night and actually be worried about something or just have something that springs up and now you can't go back to bed. One of the things that we look at heavily in our area is psychological testing. Most of the doctors and pediatricians that we use have a psychologist right in their office, so that you're not sending somebody to another office that says psychologist, where somebody's looking and they're sneaking in real quick because they don't want people to know they're going to a therapist. We have them right in the pediatric office or right in the GP office, general practitioner's office. So as they're seeing the GP or general practitioner, he can send the psychologist in and they can do their evaluation. If they have time and there's a necessity, we do a neuropsychological exam, which is a completely different, longer, more expensive test, but it gives a better indication of what's really going on with the individual. But psychological stuff is probably the most important. And if you guys start asking questions along the way, I have a lot of stuff here that we need to give away, so let's see what we have. Can somebody ask a question about something? You? Good catch. One of the things we see, if you actually had depression, anxiety ahead of time, it's going to be extremely changed and much more amplified, either good or bad, after your brain injury. You're going to have a lot more concerns about your life. For whatever reason, your brain isn't processing right, thinking right, or doing things right. Sleep, we always said, was a problem. Take a look at this. I pulled this off of ESPN a few weeks ago. They're talking about sleep deprivation as compared to what it feels to have an alcoholic buzz. And they're saying if you sleep less than 6 hours, it's walking around all day like you were impaired with 2 or 3 beers or alcoholic drinks. And that's the same thing as you reduce the amount of time, you have an increased ability to feel impaired. So kids that are not getting proper sleep just because they're high school kids, my one son doesn't go to bed till 12, 1 o'clock, and he's up at 6 o'clock. Every day he's doing this. That's without a brain injury. So it scares me to think of the kids that are really trying to get better and they're experiencing this. And we're expecting a lot out of them.
Question.
Go ahead. I already sent you something though.
Is there a correlation with traumatic brain injury and substance abuse? Do a lot of these folks turn to substance abuse to help self-medicate and so forth?
I can't speak for those people, but I can tell you what we've seen are that a lot of the people that get a TBI, not all, a lot of people that get TBIs, it doesn't have to be the younger kids, but the kids that are probably teenagers and above, they will try to find a way to cope. And part of their coping mechanism may be alcohol, it may be some marijuana, maybe something more severe, we don't know. But there's people actually go down that path where they think they're helping themselves by forgetting. Because a lot of drugs make you sort of forget your reality of where you are. And it's frustrating, but it is reality that that's what they do. I don't know if that answers it, but it's my experience with it. So these are all the things with sleep disturbance that actually affect you. And again, there's a picture in the middle, but decision making on or off the field, your reaction time, your motivation in a sport, potentially weight control, your stamina, recovery, and also accuracy. All of these things are affected just by sleep. So you add TBI on top of this, now your world goes upside down. Things do not operate properly. Talking about my son, with a few subconcussive blows and some undiagnosed concussions, I noticed his shot was a little off, and I couldn't figure out why. He'd practice for hours in the driveway, change his hands, his stance, everything he was doing. We couldn't figure it out. As soon as his time with the TBI went throughout the summer, his accuracy started coming back. Sleep, I'm sure, was a part of it early on, but now we know that his TBI was affecting what he was doing. This is some suicidal thinking. The statistics are slightly outdated. They're about a year or two old. Most current data I have, but right now, suicide is the second leading cause of death between our 12 and 18-year-olds. It's horrible. I mean, I don't think of it as being a huge thing because I don't hear about it a lot. Now that I'm doing this, I hear about it all the time. Every time I turn around. I was saying it earlier in our presentation, last year, 2017, just in the state of PA, not all over the country where I have people contact me from, I had 9 people, 9 families call me and say that their daughter, their son, their 30-year-old son, they all took their lives. And they were all brain injured at the time. I mean, Josh was one. There was another kid at Robert Morris was another one, within like a month, I think, or something. 2 kids from the same university. It's horrible. I get people from all over the country that call me and they try to figure out what to do after the fact, not before the fact.
Is the NFL still supporting the TBI research?
Are they what?
Still funding the TBI research?
The NFL is funding their own research at their own ways with some professional, I'll say bias. I don't like what the NFL is doing with their TBI stuff. They backed away from a lot of the partners that were initially engaged with them. I feel like they feel threatened as a franchise, like, NHL is the same way. Major League Baseball, Major League Lacrosse, and the NBA have not pushed back. A lot of colleges haven't pushed back, but the NFL is, I understand why. It's a big, big company, and they make a lot of money. And they have something they do, which is they took away our religion on Sundays and made football. And unfortunately, they're under a lot of siege right now. I don't know what it's going to look like in a few years. I mean, we were talking about this today. Was at lunch? We're pushing very hard for when the brain is developing in the skull. About 9, 10 years old, your skull's pretty much fully developed. As the brain is filling in that space till age about 14, if you damage your brain up until the 14-year-old, and even further, but definitely that, your genetic path of what you're going to do diminishes. It will probably never be what it fully would be. So our feeling is flag football till age 14. Hockey already took it out. You can't check until you get to 14. Football still thinks it's great to learn everything and hit early on, when if they just learned all the plays and then started really hitting later on, they'd have a much better outcome of professional athletes and people probably not being as damaged. So we're pushing really hard. We've got campaigns through Concussion Legacy. There's Stop CTE, the Patrick Risha Foundation out of Pittsburgh, and also Doylestown, Pennsylvania. They're pushing for it. And I believe the CDC has put out some stuff that they're pushing the same thing for flag until 14. Will we ever get it? I have no idea. We sued U.S. Soccer back in 2014 and won partially for a rule change, not money, just a rule change. We wanted everybody under the age of 14 to not head the ball. 1%, I think it's 1.15% of all goals in the World Cup were scored with the head. Why can't we change the rule? Why hurt younger kids when we don't need to hurt younger kids? If I took a ball and I threw it at your head, you'd probably move out of the way. You don't want to get hit in the head. Why are we making our kids get hit in the head? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. And I think some of the things that are coming down the pipe through the laws that are changing in all the states, there's a lot of state legislation going on to change tackle football at younger ages. We really believe if it gets too desperate and too, I don't even know, horrible for us, we believe there's going to be legislation that's going to come down that's going to say, guess what? If you are making a decision for a minor child and you're forcing them to play a sport, well, we don't force them. We say, hey, you do it. It's fun. You should do it. Playing this sport, that's child abuse because you're making them get hurt. And you're hurting your own child. It doesn't seem logical that we'd go that far, but that's been a lot of talk in a lot of the boardrooms I've been in. A lot of the hospitals, a lot of people are pissed off about this. I mean, I'm probably one of the most pissed off because I lost a son. But we need more questions. Go ahead. Great catch.
Are you familiar with Steubenville?
With what?
Are you familiar with Steubenville?
Never. I mean, I only know from the people that brought me in.
I mean, this is a diehard football team.
I understand that. I understand.
I have a son that plays for Central, and a nephew plays for Big Rig. They're both standouts. They're both like juniors. And like right now, I think the nephew and my sister see getting like 6 letters a day from college. But I mean, they both started playing football like 6 or 7 years old. And I mean, it's like a hit and miss situation where you can't win or lose. Like, I mean, only you know how much your son loved talking. So if you could do it all over again, I mean, what would you do?
Honestly, I never told any of my kids they can't play sports. I love sports. I think they teach so many wonderful things. You know, perseverance, dedication, working with other people, teamwork. I know a lot of people that are trying to change the way their lives are, and maybe they're not the best students, or maybe their passion is football, and they should go after it. But you have to understand the risks. You have to know what's the long-term ramification here. Like, it's not win at all costs anymore in my mind. What are you going to win? I mean, if you can win a free education, that's a win. I like that. But if you win having some sort of brain injury that you can't remember stuff at 30 or 35 and you get depressed, and now the rest of your life, I mean, I'm young, I'm 50, I feel old as can be, but I look at things and I think, my kids that have gone through stuff, if my son were to survive, I don't know what he'd be like at 50. You know, I really appreciate the fact that there's many places that I go to in Texas, and I walk in there, it's uncomfortable for me to speak about this stuff because I get screamed at by parents that I can't badmouth football. And I'm not badmouthing football. I'm badmouthing the experience that football is giving to people because they don't understand the risks. We all have to share the risk. Eventually, if a population of people becomes, mentally incapacitated to some degree, we all have to pay tax to pay for them at some point. We're all going to pay the price, whether we like it or not, whether we're burying them, paying the tax to keep them alive, whatever it may be. It's all going to fall on our shoulders. And I know it opens the doors for great education to get people to move forward in life. I love that. I don't like the fact that it's going to hurt them long term. And I think we all as family members need to manage that risk. We need to figure out where we need to go. You just have to, there's something, and I don't have it here with me. They're out on the table. It's basically building out your concussion history. I think that everybody should spend time, if you have kids in football or any sport that's contact, build out a concussion history. When did you have it? What did the doctor say? When did it occur? And then start to track the next one. If you get another one, how long was it? Was it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a year, 3 years? Start to have that so that in the future, when you're looking at your kid and going through evaluations or going to see a doctor, you can walk in, help them out a little bit. Here's what my son has experienced or daughter, and let them go through and say, okay, well, this is what they've done, and this is where they've gone to see, and this is, okay, now I have a better understanding, because they're just seeing your son or daughter for the first time. They have no idea. I would start to track that. I think that's probably the most important thing, because you may not see much. A lot of times people take a lot of blows and they don't have any concussion symptoms. Hard hits.
My son had a complaint about a migraine.
Yeah, well, the migraines, she's probably got something going on. And it may not be truly a migraine. It may be some inflammation in the brain that's really an issue. It could be something of a sign to come, basically. Can I toss out some of your stuff too? All right.
But the catch-22 is there's no telling when the brain is healed.
At this point in time, right now, I'm very hopeful in the very near future, for me, hopefully 5 or 10 years, we'll be able to image the brain more like an X-ray or with a good CT scan or fMRI or some way that we can microscopically see what's going on. I do have a friend, he actually works with a group out of Israel. They've taken apart an MRI machine, recalibrated it, and they've got certain parts of the structure of the brain they can microscopically see. We're not going to send everybody over to Israel. It's not going to happen. It's too expensive. And on top of it, the FDA's got to approve this. So we're years away from really getting to where we want to see. Unfortunately, it stinks. Any other questions? No? So this was done by Dr. Sarah Krisman. She's at Children's Hospital in Seattle, Washington. She took all of this socioeconomic status out, and she said that a history of concussions is associated with a 3-fold increase in the diagnosis of depression. This was back in 2013 of a study that was done way back in 2011. So there was already an indication that this mental health component was out there. Now, the U.S. government did the same thing with people coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan also in 2013, and they found that suicidal thinking would go up based on how many TBIs you have, 6.9%. Or 21% with multiple TBIs. And that's for the rest of your life. That's not just today. That's for the rest of your life. So 20% chance if you had multiple TBIs that you'd have an idea of suicide is way too high. I think 6% is way too high with one. It scares me to think that this data is out there and really nobody's heard of it. Very few people. So, do you guys know Simon Sinek? You ever heard of Simon Sinek? No? I don't even see a head shaking, so no. You have heard him?
Was it Simon?
Sinek.
Yes, S-I-N-E-K.
Yes.
Leaders in Class. Good book.
I haven't read that,
He
but
writes on generation.
so he actually has some interesting information about us as people, not necessarily with a TBI thing, but this is related to this, where our kids, and my kids are horrible at this thing with Snapchat and all of the little likes and dings and whatnot. Their phones have become cracked to them. If I take it away and remove it, My daughter goes ballistic, like an evil person. I've never seen anything like it in my life. But it's basically like crack. And the problem is right now, the devices have changed the way we think. So if we are normal and this is happening, when you get a TBI, it's a whole different situation. People go berserk. And if they're asked to not use their device, or maybe they're not on the team sport and they're not getting the little Snapchats or the little things, hey, practice was good, hey, you going to this house or that, all of a sudden they're excluded. Their likes, their dings, all that stuff's not happening. There's a little component in your brain, it's called dopamine. It's actually released. We regulate it with everything from smoking to drinking to gambling, but we don't with our phones. And it's becoming a problem. It's becoming a huge problem, and we don't have an answer for it, and I haven't heard of anybody other than Simon Sinek even propose solutions for it. And right now, I think it's killing things, because I have a few kids, and they don't really know how to communicate with one another. I mean, I don't know if you guys have experienced it, but I literally can go out to dinner with my kids and some other friends and whatnot, and we're not really talking. They're like this, and but they're not saying a word. It's all like little pictures, Snapchat, going back and forth. And I go, what are you guys doing? What happens if you have an interview? My one son who's in college, he's going to be a communications specialist, sales guy. He doesn't even talk. I'm like, how are you going to talk to people if this is all you're doing the whole time? I'm like, maybe there's a sales way to sell things like that, but I don't think you're going to do great doing that. But these are the things that really start to scare me, because from an addictive standpoint with dopamine, if you actually realize that dopamine's an issue, you'll actually get to a point where people that are addicted to things, they mostly, if it was alcohol in their teens when they had trouble, they turn to alcohol instead of a parent or an adult or a friend. And if they're not turning to that person now for help, they're turning to the device, and the device doesn't respond, now all hell breaks loose and suicidality comes out. And my thought is, if we can change that, and I can change my kids, maybe there's going to be some way down the line that we can get away from that. Team Up, Speak Up. Have you guys heard anything about this? So Team Up, Speak Up was a 1905 book written by Harvard football coach. And the Harvard football coach said this: we are a team. We look out for each other. A teammate with a concussion needs your help. I expect you to speak up to a coach, athletic trainer, or if a teammate might have a concussion, remove them from a field. And that right there was lost from 1905. So Concussion Legacy started this. We do this every 6 months. What we do is we have a coach, a captain, an athletic director, anybody, a baseball coach, anybody that wants to participate. You get the team. Somebody gets up and gives this short little speech. If something happens, please go and make sure somebody on the team helps to get them off the field. If you do this and you record the little person saying it and take a picture and send it to us, right now we have over 250 organizations, including the NFL, the NHL, most colleges, USA Hockey, Major League Lacrosse. We do this every 6 months. They all send in videos, and we're building up this whole database of success, because we want to have things happen in the right direction. Next week, we launch NHL hockey. We've got Jeremy Roenick, Max Pacioretty, and also Amanda Kessel, Phil Kessel's sister. They're joining us, and we're actually going to go out and hopefully put out a nice little rush on all of the hockey people out there. This is the season for it, and we're going to actually have a lot of teams throughout the country help. And what it really is if a kid on the team, not the coaching staff, not the trainers, they're already trying to watch for this stuff, and even the parents. These are the teammates on the team. Start to look out for one another. They're teammates. They should be helping each other, not going, hey, I'm not going to say anything, or do the opposite. I'm going to say something because I need his spot. I want to be out there. We need people to start to talk about this. If they see something, report it. Self-report it. Get it out there. We have so many underdiagnosed opportunities in concussions. It's unbelievable. I mean, this is, again, an epidemic, and it's driving me crazy and a lot of people out there. This doesn't really look like that. This looks a lot different out there on that table. I don't know why the font looks like it does. It's got to be this computer. But this is your concussion history. This is what that form looks like. We have it outside. I can also send it over via email if you guys would like it, if your name's on the list out front. We have them in PDF form, but you should actually do a concussion history for any of your children. Secondarily, this one here is, what do I do if I suffer a concussion? And then I have one more, which is the concussionclinics.org. Those are really not readable by my mind, so. These are the components that we usually send people to for suicide. Hopefully your school has good programs as far as psychological components. But in Pennsylvania, which I know we're not too far away, I left a couple of brochures outside. We have a thing called Brain Steps. Brain Steps will eventually be in this state, in every state. It just got picked up by the CDC because of its success. They've actually adopted it now in Colorado. It's a layer between the school system and you. So what happens is Brain Steps comes in. What they do is they do a full evaluation to see where they are, just from an educational standpoint. So as a brain injury, you have your teachers in your school system, your nurse, your psychologist, hopefully at school. You have your parents, you, and then all your doctors. Everybody signs a HIPAA, and the HIPAA allows us, when the protocol changes, to everybody communicate into the whole portal so everybody knows what to do. So you're moving forward with your studies properly. If somebody says, okay, you can increase your class time, everybody knows at once. We don't have to go. I thought your doctor told you 2 weeks ago you could go back to class. Why? What are you doing? We want to make sure everybody knows. And it's out there on the actual, you guys, it is out there, right? Yeah. So Brain Steps, you can go on and take a look at their website, see what they have, but they have a return to learn, and they also have, return to your school day, because what we're thinking right now and what we've been promoting through a concussion management team is 2 days in, you're back at school. You can be passive, sit in the back of the room if you need sunglasses, if it's too bright, but you need to be not deconditioning your body. Just like working out, if you stop going to school, you stop learning, you stop thinking, you stop spending that time in the classroom, that's when the deconditioning starts. You may not think of it that way, but that's really what's happening with your brain is you decondition when you step away from school and you don't actually go to school. And we keep having a lot of kids go, I'm so far behind on work and I don't want to get back to school, and it's all this anxiety thing comes up, and we always say, if you had to take a drug like chemotherapy to get rid of your cancer and you hated it because of what it did, what would you do? Not take it and die, or would you take it? So ours is go to school, take the medicine and go to school. We'll work through the concussion management team to make sure you're going through the day nice and slow. If you have issues or symptoms, push through a little and then go to the nurse until they relieve and then go back to class. We want people involving and not deconditioning. Different thought process, but that's what we're using. And that's our website. What questions do you have? You guys have to have questions. There's no way. Anybody? Do you want me to start over? We can go through it again.
Is there a testing you take like prior to sports?
Baseline testing?
What's that?
Like baseline testing?
I don't know. Like before we went overseas, we also took a pre-TBI test.
Say that last part again?
Like military, before you go overseas, you take a pre-TBI test. And then when you come back, you take the same test. And they...
Well, for sports, it should be, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they do at least the impact or the C3 logic. There should be at least some baseline testing done at every school in America.
Before the sport starts.
Before the season starts. Yeah, I mean, that's the rule, right, in the state? Yeah? Question? Come on, you have a question. Do you have a comment at least? All right. Yeah, what was your question?
What is the current test if someone does? If you think someone has a concussion,
If you think someone does,
and if you're like after they get hit and you're like on the field, they get hit and they're taken off, like, what do they do that?
well, you should, if somebody gets hurt and taken off, they should go to their school, coaches, athletic trainers first. And then from there, the next step would be to go to a doctor or specifically a concussion doc. Okay? I mean, that's what really should happen. Can you catch? Good catch. Anybody else? Next?
It's just very, very interesting to hear.
It is.
It's, I have children who play sports, and it just is, you just don't, I just don't think it's just taken as serious as it really is.
Well, I think there's a lot of science that hasn't caught up to what I think some of us know. I mean, I don't know it all. I can't believe everything I know is going to turn out to be correct. But from what I know so far, we need more science. And science is moving super fast, but science doesn't produce answers really fast. It takes a lot of trial and error and a lot of research and a lot of people and a lot of data to come up with a solution and a lot of clearances, like a lot of FDA clearances. And until we get there, There's a lot of unknowns that we're still working through and trying to perfect, and it's scary. It really is scary.
Because you said between the 0 to 4
15 to
years
19.
old and then 15 to 19, but like the gentleman said, they start playing tackle football at 7 years old. And so or earlier, they played it for almost 7 years before there's any real, and they don't even really know how to tackle.
Well, again, there is a group of people out there, initiatives to try to change that rule, or at least the philosophy to get flagged to be the promoted one until you get to a certain age, 14. I don't know that it'll work. I mean, you push and push and push, and you hope, knowing what you know, that you're helping society by making a difference, but a lot of times society wins, or professional sports win. I mean, the movie Concussion, it's a good movie, right? Did you see it? Well, it was this big. NFL got involved and didn't want it to be released because it exposed them. So they cut it back, and it was 40% of what the movie was. When I saw the pre-screen, 40% of what it was. It's still a good movie, but they took all the inflammatory stuff that the NFL didn't want out. They didn't want it, and I get that. It's a franchise. They don't want to blow it up. But big money and big power works. Did you see, I didn't actually pull it up, did you see the thing that they now are making the smoking industry do? So they just put out this, I don't know if I copied, I probably didn't. I didn't. The smoking industry now has a new warning they have to put on there that children and people around secondhand smoke will acquire something if they continue to do so. It's a little label thing now that I now have to add, but they're still going after that group because of what they've done, because they didn't want to own up to their issues early on.
Where's the nearest concussion expert to this area? Pittsburgh, Columbus?
He's in the back of the room, I think. I think, right? I mean, you're the local guy?
I can speak over. We have two one part-time sports doctors and sports chiropractors, all pre-concussions. We developed some team of neurologists that also help that. And then also, in some cases, we do refer out and something like that. But usually, most of the things we can rehab and take care of. Let's say 80% of them. And we do all baseline testing at all schools we take care of. We talk about C3 logic. We do that.
I actually think C3 logic is better than impact. Impact, unfortunately, kids, they sandbag that test.
I think several reasons why I like C3 logic. One is that I think it's simpler for the trainer and people to actually use, and actually free for the student to use. Participate in. And the other nice thing is, since it's cloud-based, the trainer can test them at the school, and I can see it pretty much as soon as she can upload it.
Right.
So they can call the hair or text and say, hey, look at so-and-so's C3 and see what you think. So that's a nice advantage, too, because if you're at another game, if you're somewhere else, or, you can at least get...
Yeah, you need to be able to have access to the data, right? But if you have another, I mean, if anybody has any question, we use concussionclinics.org. It's Concussion Legacy in our deal, where you go on, you plug in your zip, and it gives you a radius. You get to make it as big as you want, and you can find a group. And we should probably make sure you folks are in that list so that when they put in this zip code, you show up. So.
When do you know to pull a child out or adolescent out from sports? Is there a certain number of concussions or experiences, or is that?
Yeah, I think going back to the older sports protocols, it was always like, well, if you have 3 in a year, you're out. I don't know if we go by that so much right now.
I don't think it's much.
Yeah,
We don't know if like, you can get hammered, not really sure, or get a bump, and all of a sudden you're off. I mean, there was an old philosophy. I don't think it's really there anymore.
Yeah, we don't do that. It's more trying to use testing and like he said, some of the management to see when that data, because it can be very different. I mean, like he said, you can see, here's my take on it, and when I know concussion is going to be an issue or a battle, I think if you see the see each other, and you get that hit that you talked about one year. They both get up and they walk away. And I think what happens there is, usually you go ask them, hey, how you doing? And they're fine. And they look fine, they're acting fine. And so, you look at that and you wonder, okay, what happened? I think exactly it. I have time to anticipate that I'm going to hit you.
You both do. If we see each other, we can get tight, you know what I mean? Yeah.
You see them, they prepare to hit.
It's the one that's coming from over here that you don't see.
And they don't see the guy coming from the side.
Yeah.
He gets boom. His head gets back and they go down like a ton of bricks. That's the one,
Well, like the quarterbacks. I mean, the quarterbacks are back like this, and they get hit from behind. I mean, they're so vulnerable. It's scary. Yes.
It's not really a question of statement, but I think some coaches don't take it as seriously as they have.
Who doesn't?
Like the coaches. Because I was playing softball a couple years ago, and I got hit from the side of the head.
With a bat or a ball?
The ball. They were like all the, they were really left over there and they feel tripping. And then the coaches told me I can't.
Well, see, that's the team up, speak up. If you think, just think that potentially there's something wrong, you go tell a coach. You have to say, look, I got hit, I don't feel right, or something. Can somebody check me out?
Yeah, well, they saw me, so I feel like coaches should
You got to take it on yourself. You got to literally go, this is my life. I hate to say it that way, but that's the truth. You have to go, this is my life. I don't know what that just did to me. That's how you have to think about it and go, look, I got hit. I know you didn't see it, but could you just check me out? I don't even know. What do you do? You could play dumb and just say, can you just go through something? You should be evaluated. Yeah.
I'm going to be brother they put it. And back in our time, it was brutal. That blindside, everything, we all let with our heads. There was nothing was fair. For real. I had concussion every day, every practice. But what I'm trying to say is, though, you're trying to tell kids this now, they're going to say, well, you did it, you played, you're all right. But now we having this conversation, they're over. Like I said, it's a football time. There's like guys who went on to play for college, now they're walking around like zombies. For real. And really do something else.
It's probably a lingering brain injury that's just taken over, and they haven't done much to resolve it. And it's unfortunate, but I remember back in the day, I told you I was 50. I'm not old, but I'm old. And we used to not wear seatbelts in cars. And then a lot of accidents started happening, and people say, you got to wear a seatbelt. So now, when I see somebody not without a seatbelt, or even putting a child's seat in the front seat of a car I saw the other day, and I'm like, what are you doing? That's not supposed to happen. You start to question things. And I think we're right now at that point with brain injury, and I'm probably one of the ones that's questioning the most, but there's a lot of us out there that are questioning a lot of things that are going on and sort of second guessing and going, I love sports, but what are we really doing here? Are we trying to damage our kids forever, trying to change society forever? What are we trying to do? Is it all about all cost win, all cost, make as much money as you can? Because unfortunately, you can't die and take your money with you. You die and you're gone. So make the most out of your life, and if you can make it as healthy as possible. Our parents know, my parents are in their 70s, and they have their own ailments, and they're like, oh, I should have taken care of this years ago. Well, this is one of those things you can take care of right now. People can start to do something right now, even minimally. I'm not going to give you anything, though. Go ahead.
I also think one of the things that we didn't mention here, that we did mention earlier to the OVAC, is that back in the day, usually you just had your sport for that season. But nowadays, a lot of times, when kids are playing and they're real serious about it, or they're playing at a higher level, they're playing 10, maybe 12 months out of the year. So, they have more opportunity to have injury, if it's a knee injury, a shoulder injury, or if it's a brain injury. So I think that part of the things that maybe we didn't need to be that aware years ago, because the players weren't playing all year long. They did rest their brains for a period of time or what have you, and now it seems as if a lot of times these sports, they're playing it, 10, 12 months out of the year.
Plus, they're bigger, faster, and stronger now than when we played. They're training. The training's going more advanced weightlifting, the speed clinics, and they're flying. I mean, it's
Speed is unbelievable. It really is. And guys are physically bigger. One of the things we do see at Children's Hospital are 10, 11, 12-year-old kids with torn ACLs, meniscus tears. I mean, injuries that are not supposed to be for that young of a person. They're in the ER getting things repaired, or they get to 16 and 17, they go, I'm not having fun anymore. I know I've got 5 D1 scholarships ready to go. I'm done. I'm not playing football. I'm not going to play lacrosse. I'm not going to play hockey or soccer. I'm done. So it's an overuse, and they get burned out on sports. One of my good friends from the LA Kings, he's the coach, John Stevens, he right now tells me, I see him most summers, and he says, I'm not getting athletes anymore. I'm getting hockey players. Guys that just play hockey and train and hockey and train. They're not guys that play soccer, play some hockey, maybe play lacrosse or some other sport, even if it's rugby, for God's sakes, or something like that. But they play other sports so that their bodies are more able to withstand other things, other forces from the outside. Right now, we've got people that are so good at one sport, but they've only trained that one sport, and they do very little cross-training. So, you had a question?
Yeah, so if there's somebody that presents, which in reality would actually be like a TBI, but they're brought to a mental health provider because they're showing signs and symptoms that would mimic, depression, or even, if somebody's concerned about suicide. As a mental health provider, are the techniques then that they would use, I guess, is it kind of null and void for somebody who has a TBI? Or is the brain able to take, the physical brain able to take the same techniques that the mental health providers use for people who are suffering with depression, anxiety? Are those techniques actually effective with somebody with a TBI?
So let me just make sure I understand the question, because I don't really understand. I don't. So you're saying if somebody had a TBI, but they never really got it diagnosed?
Correct, yes.
Okay, but
So
now...
a parent brings their child in and says, my 25-year-old son, he's not sleeping, he's very depressed, he's not bathing. So they're showing all the signs that as a mental health provider would say, you look like you would have, major depressive disorder.
Right.
So,
Well, I would hope they would ask more questions like, okay, tell me more about, like, what does he do on a daily basis? Is he involved with sports or any activity? I would hope that there was a much broader conversation before they just jumped into a diagnosis. I mean, that's what I would think. I think that there would have to be a much greater conversation. I guess maybe I'm assuming too much. Knowing the doctors I know, they ask so many questions, and I'm sure you guys ask so many questions to a point where you kind of uncover what's going on. Because, again, when you walk in, they don't even know you. They should be doing enough question and answering to fill out their form to go, all right, which way are we going to go with this? I mean, that's really what diagnosis is. You have to learn
I'm
the
just
person.
thinking, though, I had formerly worked in mental health, and I'm literally thinking about the assessments that we could use, and none of them really, they talk about activities and leisure time, but none of it really ever kind of goes into historical things. And maybe that's something that mental health providers...
It could have been that provider. I would hope that they would go deeper into a further evaluation rather than just admitting them or doing diagnosis.
Do you know the techniques that mental health providers use? Is it effective, though?
I know the ones that I work with from Children's Hospital. I know what they do, and they have a very extensive list. I don't know the group that you work with or other ones that do less, because their CHOP is involved, or Children's Hospital is involved with many aspects of the people. They don't necessarily just walk into the mental health component. They're usually referred from some other doctor inside the hospital to head over there. So their records go with them, so to speak. So I'm not familiar with just a standalone mental health facility that takes somebody in and they're trying to figure out what's going on. I would hope, and if that's the case, maybe there's a change in society that needs to happen, or a standard that needs to be developed where they ask more. But I can ask around and get back to you. I don't have that answer. So it's a good question, though.
Is it possible to get a brain injury without anything physically happening?
What do you mean, like your brain, get an injury without injury? I don't understand.
Like getting a brain injury, like having a brain injury, but you never got like any kind of physical injury along with it. You never hit in the head. Is it possible to get one without any kind of traumatic stress?
I'm not really too sure I understand. So like if you get hit in the body, or what?
Just in general, you just end up with a brain injury. It's just
I think I think your body needs to be moved in a way where your head shakes, whether it's hitting the body, the legs, falling down. I mean, you can get a brain injury by domestic violence, slip and fall, car accidents, athletics. If you have an idea, tell me the example, because maybe I don't understand it.
Like you just do a normal motion, like a head shake, just a regular one, and you end up with it.
Well, if you're like, from a musical standpoint, like a headbanger, I bet you there's some people that get some brain injuries doing that. I would imagine so. I mean, you could. Your brain is a very soft, supple, jello substance. So if you do anything, the inside of your skull is not as smooth as the outside of your skull either. So if you're doing anything to shake your brain and twist it inside of your head in some fashion aggressively, you could cause a brain injury. You don't necessarily have to be drilled from the outside forces. I bet you personally could cause a brain injury. Like, for instance, banging heads. Well, there's a lot of boxers that have issues. You know, punch drunk was the initial thing that was out there. We've been testing, with King Divic actually, we've been testing MMA fighters at several fights. Not the big UFC ones, but some smaller regional ones. And we test them before they go in, and we test them when they come out. We've actually had some people we test to go in, and they are so messed up, we recommend them not even to fight. But they still go in and they fight, and they come out and they go, all right, and they go through the test and they see, and we're like, well, based on what the scoring is, you probably got injured here in the ring. Why don't you just sit here, have a drink a Gatorade or whatever they're drinking, and relax. Oh, I'm totally fine. Just give me 5 minutes. Just let me go get something 5 minutes. You come back 5-10 minutes later, they're laying down. Oh, I don't feel very good. And it's like, oh, the test worked. You definitely have a brain injury. You have something wrong. So I have some good friends that are boxers right now, and they keep looking to us for answers. And I keep telling them, I don't have any answers. And if you want to get in the ring and force brain injuries on yourself and other people, that's on you. But when you're done, let me know, because you could be a great science experiment.
This guy from here from school, my dad was best friends, so we used to stay at night. Growing up, he couldn't even know who I was by then, so he couldn't say my name.
That's after all those injuries over all those years. It's scary. It really is scary. And there's a lot of people out there that are going down that path that you hate to see it, you hate to hear it, but we got to change what we're doing. We have to change what we're doing. And we don't have the science there yet. The science is coming, but we can't let Josh or my son Alexander, we can't let any of this happen again. There's too many people. It's males, females, nobody's exempt from this at all. It's scary. So, anything else? Any other questions? Comments? That's all I have for you. Thanks for coming.
It was very, very interesting. I mean, I have a son, like I said, and a nephew. They're playing for the OVAC, in the OVAC. And I also learned about the guys getting deployed to Afghanistan. I was deployed over to Desert Storm, and back then they didn't give us no testing, as far as the concussion protocol or whatever. So I really learned a lot today. I mean, this is more serious than we know. It's, like I said, we're from Steubenville, Ohio, which is a football town, and sometimes, this is bigger than the sport, And I mean, kids are dying at a young age and being impacted for the rest of their life, and it's a wake-up call.
I learned that concussions are actually very common. People can get them doing anything. Based off the information given to us, I learned that I myself may have actually suffered a concussion riding a four-wheeler.
At Trinity Health System, we're trying to continue to up our game with concussion management and treatment. And I think making the public aware is important. It's a real phenomenon, and that it needs to be treated properly, and that sometimes you may have to sit out of a sport or out of an activity for your long-term health, and that it's very important.
Today, we're talking about understanding TBIs and mental health. It's personally very important to me because I believe that so many people are undereducated. They don't have an appreciation for what the mental health components are of this. And more importantly, they haven't really thought about the long-term risks and ramifications that society and their family is going to go through after all of the hits, are absorbed and their body goes through this and recovers, they're not going to realize that their brain is not healing as fast as it would be, and that they're not going to have control of a lot of their emotions, as well as really controlling how they think in their memory. And we talk about Alzheimer's and dementia as a long-term issue, but people that are getting repetitive head trauma early on are going to have these issues probably in their 20s, potentially 30s, definitely 40s and 50s, which is way ahead of the 60s and 70s with Alzheimer's. And if people really and truly care, they'll step back from this and they'll say, I need to understand what's going on before I put myself, my child, or anybody at risk.
Well, it just reinforced the importance that, you know, we need to attend to the mental health symptoms that are associated with traumatic brain injury and CTE and address those issues. And so many times we look at concussions and we wait for those symptoms to go away, but I think we need to be more aggressive in our approach and start treating those symptoms, and also as part of the diagnosis or evaluation of people who have head injuries, to also take into account those symptoms associated with CTE and TBI that are mental health issues.
One thing that we could take away would be that people would understand the risks, they'd understand where to go for resources, whether it's the Josh Merriman Foundation, the Untold Foundation, Concussion Legacy Foundation, or if they're banged up and injured and they'd like to find a doctor, they should go to concussionclinics.org to find the proper practitioner to solve their problems.